Okay, so thank you everyone to attend today's webinar. Today's webinar is exciting topic, sustainable metaverse experience design for the new experience economy. So I'm going to give you some snapshots. So actually we have a several agenda like a metaverse applications, designing experience 101 and the metaverse user experience for potential applications, and then designing sustainable metaverse experiences. So we have three distinguished speakers that share their insight about how the designing the metaverse experiences. So I'm going to have my own introduction and set the stage. And then Avanashi will have some demo. I'm not sure whether he is in India, and then I tried contacting for several days, but I could not, so he may be travel or something. So in case that Avanashi will join, then I will be Jim, will be the next, and then also Rebecca will be the final. Okay, so like I mentioned that I will give it some introduction, and then Avanashi will talk about some demo about the sustainable metaverse, and then the Jim talk about the sustainable metaverse experience design, and then finally Rebecca about the socially responsible metaverse experience design. Okay, so without any delaying, I start my own. Okay, so what is mean by the experience economy? So actually, this is the one actually the coined by the like very famous for experience economy. It's a business law. They talk about what the final stage of the business is. You industrial revolution, then you have a commodities, goods, service, and then next will be experience and then transformer experiences. So you have like, for example, in axis, like you have more value. If you go into the experience, traditional goods service will be commoditizes. So they can lose their like momentum to create value. And then you have like a customization, and then you have like a more upgraded value. So then you have a better position in the market. So this is like a basic idea that the experience will be very, very important to create new economy. And then we are now at the time of this one, exactly, because the metaverse is all about experience. Okay, so I just summarized his book. Actually, I give you some here, for example, that I give you some his book, like a summary, like here. So I already share you, and then also share later, so you can see detail. But I summarize what it talk about, like how actually the experience design works, like a framework. So all about is like capture the customer's attention. So how you get the customer's attention, right? So to get the customer's attention, you should provide the experience. So what kind of experience? It should be memorable, and they should be engaged by the customers and users. And then the experiences should be robust, cohesive, personal, dramatic. And then he explained everything here. But he provided some realm of the how actually design your experience to get the attention. So he made some filler of like what kind of experience you can provide, like educational, entertainment, aesthetic, and escapistic. It's like a fantasy, right? And most of the like, for example, like experience could be like active, you participate actively, or passive, or observe, or immersive, right? So what he suggests actually the where you get the maximum value, in some way optimize all these different aspects in some between, in some among. So for example, that you can combine, for example, combine the entertainment, educational means education, educational entertainment, edutainment. So you can combining, mix it, and then mingle it, you get more value. And then he talked about that the experience should be something like have a theme. And then if you are the designer, you know about the whole thing about theme, thematic, and dramatic, and then they have a storytelling, everything, right? And then most important thing is that they give you a sense of presence and sense of a feeling. So in that case, like the emotion is very important topics you need to discuss about. And then also about how you can be personalize the experience. That's a very important aspect you should consider. Okay, so what then in the general experience, what is unique about metaverse? And then I'm going to give you maybe later that about what is generated metaverse, because there are many different like interpretation of the metaverse now. I have some unified view, but first I will give you the like main topic of the what kind of metaverse experience they can provide. Yeah, definitely it's immersive, right? Is a reality experience. So reality technology is very important. For example, like XR device, virtual reality, like augmented reality or extended reality, and then mixed reality, everything, then reality technology is very important. And then 3D computing, like in everything will be in the 3D, because metaverse world will be is a metaverse with consists of the three components. One, the most important thing is the space. It's a 3D space and time over the from the past to the future, and then object, material, what kind of construct this 3D space. So a lot of the element actually supporting this immersive 3D experience is spatial computing. So everything that the people and then machine and environment and can be digitalized, can be put into your digital space. And then also 3D space, building, and then also like a viewing, like a 360 views and spatial gears, haptics, and other sensing device and wearable augmented reality or something like that. And also they provide emotion should be enhanced. So for example, fantasy, sensation, sense of a presence, and empathy, and memorable experience they can have. And then also like they provide engagement, right? Engagement is an essential part of that get the attention from the customers and users. So they will provide enhance like engagement experience. Well, like gamification is one example that they provide this one. And then active participation is important. You may know about the Roblox, right? Because the people's active participate and create something and they share with other people. And then so it's like a communication is through the like a community. And then also like they will be communicate represented by the some digital representation of human, like for example, like avatar in the digital like representation, or sometimes like robot avatar like a surrogate. And then also like they will be like a Mars in the future. So there will be like a future will be like virtual space and real space will be combined and converged. And then people will be like a back and forth between the real space and virtual space and virtual space and real space. And then they can be like a crossover connected. And then they will be experience like a real and virtual like crossover experience. They can have it. And then also like a co-creation, like creative, like creative will be they participate in the community, and then there will be co-creation experience have. And then yeah, definitely like they will have a virtual commerce like real life. So they will be have some monetization like transaction and commerce experience. And then they share a lot of people at the same time. So it kind of like a massive sharing experience you can have it. I call like augmented network effect. And then, and finally, most important is customized and personalized experience with storytelling. So this is a very important like aspect of the metaverse can provide it to you. Okay, and then so I'm going to define the, like what is meaning by the today's topic, right? Sustainable like a metaverse experience, how you can design it. So I just have coined the terms that I call it SMX design is integration of many different type of the design. For example, you are in the UX is well known, right? It's a somewhat technical. So it's a human computer interaction design based on your whether you're web or your is a mobile device or the XR device. So they provide like human computer interaction. And then the saying is like a user experience, UX designing is one part. The other is a marketing side or the business side, customer experience design. So is a customer company interaction. So and then in the metaverse user experience, I explained the unique about the metaverse. So like a human metaverse world, like a human can interact with the metaverse world is a space-time material. You can interact. And then finally, sustainable user experience, that what I mean by is interaction design, caring about people. For example, like a society, community, ethnic, whether like they have like a privacy issues and then some of the security issues, ethnic issues, and whether they contribute to society or something like that. So they should care about the people and planning our environment. For example, that we have a climate change risk and then how they can reduce carbon or how it can support environmental protection or something like that. So they should care about the planet and economic sustainability. Yeah, this is a very important. Recently, there are many trials that many companies and many industry, they have their own metaverse space. They're building up their metaverse world. And then I'm going to explain a little bit later, but and then so even with actually without any economic sustainability, it can be like a one-time event. So they should be persistent and then keep creating value. So economic value, sustainability is important. So I combine everything aspect of these four aspect integration by defining sustainable metaverse experience designing. Okay, so this is one example that recently a lot of the like metaverse shopping and the showroom and the mall type of that. So you can have a like a 3D immersive virtual world. The customers are able to interact in real time and every day with the digital environment. And then your avatar will join and interact with your world, the space and materials. And then the beauty of this one is actually in real space, actually the store managers can pre-test a product before actually producing, and then also perform smart inventory shipping, life cycle management, reduce number of operation physical stores. So based on this like a virtual like metaverse space, actually they can contribute positively your real space. So in that way, so this is like a environmental or the people's like a sustainability. So they care about like how you reduce your raw materials, energy, water, and then use of the like how we can reduce like GHG emissions, like carbon emissions reduce, and then also waste reduction, like we call like a circular economy, and increase recycling, manufacturing, logistics, and also like NFT is one of the key like a enabler to like you can transact something, you can represent your valuable asset by the NFT, and then they can transact it. So they will be like give you another layer of the experience to improve the engaged shopping experience. And the integration with the gamification is one of the like encouraging you participate and then participate in the commerce. And also like AI is very important topics you should consider, like in the future with the AI in the metaverse will be you have their personal profile, and then you give you the personalized experience. This is the in the book about the experience economy they call transformative. Transformative is the highest value creator. So personalized experience can be provided, rich and personalized experience can be provided by AI. Okay, so I'll have a time a little bit. So first I'll check whether Abanashi is there. Are you there? Okay, so he might be now attend today. So I think that I will give you make up some time, and then Jim will be follow up. Okay, so I will explain a little bit. So this is one actually I will share this one. So this is one I get the media focus about what to talk about all about the metaverse. So this is the one you already have it, like in the, for example, Newsweek about the Roblox CEO interview, and the Microsoft, the Meta changed their name, and also like Apple and then Google, they all are looking at the metaverse, and then also the major medias to cover this issue recently. And then also you can see the, like, for example, a lot of the application is going on. Like, for example, JP Morgan opened a bank branching in the metaverse, and they're like Boeing in the like Walmart, and even the Samsung and automotive companies, and then and a lot of the like fashion design is and then also like entertainment, Disney. So this is one typical phenomenon now. Okay, so and then creative economy I mentioned about, like for example, there is a virtual land sale, like a Decentraland or the Omland. You have like a land sale, and then they can represent the NFT. And also, this is one actually I'm not going to throw all thing, but I want to give you some snapshot that actually how actually the virtual space and the real space will be integrated. So actually the starting from the virtual space and real space, and then both space will be join each other. So one example you are well known is augmented reality. So augmented reality means that your like a virtual object will be joined to your real space through your augmented reality device. They overlay with your real space. It's one augmentation of by virtual to the real space. And the other is like, for example, the augmented virtuality. For example, your avatar, your product, your like buildings, everything in the real space entity space, and will be joined your virtual space, and then it will be like mixed with your virtual environment, virtual artifact, virtual people with like a representation of your person or the object, the animal, everything will be joined. And then in the another layer we can think about is a mirror world. Like for example, you have a virtual space and real space, and they are in synchronized by the real-time data from we call digital twins. So they will be like mirror space and they can join. And then also there is a well-known like a mixed reality, then everything will be in between, that there will be crossover between the virtual and real, and then real will be augmented to the virtual, and virtual will be augmented to real, and then you will be crossover between them. So this is one thing that you should consider. And then for that, actually, we need a lot of the different technology will be supported. And then mostly maybe you're interesting is like XR device, how the Oculus and then like Horizon, the space will be like viewed by the like in the Oculus or the like other like a device. And then there is a rumor like when the Apple Glass will be coming out or something like that. And then AI is very important, how actually they can represent your human. And also we need like for some other like technology, especially that if you want to be a space be like autonomous, like we call DAO, decentralized autonomous entities. And then you need like a decentralization technology. So you need the blockchain, Web3, like you put in your internet in the completely decentralized way. So these topics, everything that you heard about in the metaverse. So I'm not going to talk about this one. This is one actually the good to see. So actually the what kind of application now. So you can think about like for example like a fashion. You have like a Ralph Lauren and the Nike, and then all kind of the different brands in the fashion could be in the metaverse. And then also like a retail shopping mall, and then also like IKEA, and the automotive like auto shop, and then customer electronics, for example, Samsung, and then the home appliance, and then even banking and entertainment. And then also like a sport is important. And then most important is a travel, right? Because the COVID-19 is very limited in the physical travel, and then how they actually, the realistic experience looks like you're traveling some specific or some like a museum travel or some kind of spot you can have it. And then also realized actually that without visiting actual house, you can look through your metaverse space. And also in the education is one of the important, especially the healthcare education. And then also like manufacturing, I mentioned like all the factories and the business we can be in the metaverse. And then I'm not going to talk about. And then And then I mentioned about like the fundamental building block is like NFT, and then like for example decentralization like blockchain. So this can be one of the good representation of the like, new economic system. So for example, this is one view that you can have whatever you have in the virtual space and physical space.
Converged Metaverse Physical.
I was just having that feeling.
Could you move to your speaker? Okay, thank you. So you can have it. There will be the complete cycle of the commerce. Actually,
Isn't that clear?
Your virtual space will be like linked with your real space, and then most important technologies like NFT,
They had 30
like
seconds to break that
cryptocurrencies, and
slide.
other like realistic technology can join. Okay, so I will start my.
I was trying to figure it out, you know?
Oh, who is? Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's now. Okay, so I did my part that actually I introduced all aspects actually about what is metaverse and what kind of technology supported, especially what is like experience economy, and then what is mean by the like designing experience, especially for the like how you can make it sustainable like a metaverse experience designing. So I think that it's a good time to over to like Jim. He's really is a practitioner, is an expert in the designing experience. So Jim, it's your turn.
Yes, thank you. And there were so many great sort of topics brought up there that it was sort of, you know, an exhaustive view of, you know, the overall sort of picture. And from my perspective, you know, just to give you some background on my project, we're really looking at storytelling within sort of metaverse and spatial frameworks. So everything I'm thinking of and have thought of sort of comes through that lens, as opposed to, you know, others sort of build more like a digital twin view of the world and, you know, create, you know, the virtual showrooms within there and like the virtual malls. That's less a storytelling arc or a game like we're building. So I speak from it, you know, from the gaming and sort of, you know, storytelling narrative arc perspective, and how best to design something within a 3D spatial framework, similar to like we've been doing with our project for the last few years. And to give you some background on that, it started out sort of pre-NFT by a few years and was, you know, really sort of designed to be a web-based immersive experience that you could go through certain 3D environments and pick up all of this sort of rich media and content that we built in there. But it was designed from sort of a narrative arc perspective, as opposed to like a Google Maps digital twin perspective, where you can also put content on every street corner, you know, and you can algorithmically decide what you want to see as opposed to someone else. That's a bit different from, I think, you know, where most people's excitement in the metaverse is right now. When you look at all of these sort of world building virtual worlds where, you know, you're essentially taking on a role as the user, that really excites people. And, you know, to pull in some of the themes you just mentioned, what I think is essential to like sort of a metaverse definition is, first of all, that it's something that's persistent, that it's out there whether I'm in there right now or not. And I'm excited about my role in it. And my role is not just like a Web 2 role where I'm just a user or a purchaser or a subscriber, but it's also that I'm somehow an owner and I'm invested in it in some way. So that gives a little bit of background, tying a lot of those themes together. But to build on that, and from a sustainability perspective, obviously there's two different ways to look at sustainability. There's, you know, minimizing your carbon footprint based on which chain you choose and whether it's an environmentally friendly chain. And then there's also sort of designing an experience to leverage what you're doing so that it's more impactful and requires, you know, less of a literal sort of narrative arc. And by that, I mean, like, to think of Disney World. Like Disney World, if you go there, you fly in a plane, you drive in a bus or a car to get there, and then you walk through this sort of spatial main street that's been constructed. And then all of the other, Magic Kingdom and all of the different things have their spatial places and they all fit together. But if you think about it, it's not like Google Maps where it's like a literal world that just goes on forever. It's designed in such a way that it leverages all of these abstract sort of placements of these different concepts within that main street and within, the kingdom. And, you have the castle, you have Space Mountain, you have all of these spatial sort of markers, and then everything that comes in between. And it's really just designed perfectly sort of in the old world, pre-internet, that when you leave there, you can be at the water cooler like months from then and discuss it with someone else. And you have this total conception of where everything is, what the meaning is, and you can have a discussion about what you did there when you're not there. So that's an example of, leveraging, the design of something so that it really becomes sort of like a meaningful, abstract, persistent concept that you don't have to be at to like discuss. And that's where, I think there's so much excitement now about all of these virtual worlds, because in the last 10 years, everything became very literal. It's like, you think of streaming, everyone's battling for your exact minute to be watching this new show on your iPad or on TV, on Netflix versus HBO. And either you're watching it or you're not. Either you're watching that or you're watching something else or you're on social media. And I think that all of those things are sort of fleeting in a way, and to build a world is sort of the opposite of that. You don't need to be in it to have it be meaningful and to get value from it. And I think that part of that is the abstraction as opposed to the literal nature of it. And when our project was in its early stages, we were going in this sort of abstract direction, and everyone else was trying to take us into this, like we talked to some potential investors back then, and everyone was trying to take us in this very literal Google Maps type, here's every street corner in the world, and here's all the content that can be populated algorithmically. And I think that's sort of the opposite of a virtual world. That's the opposite of like a content environment that, takes on a Disney World type magic. So from a sustainability perspective, I think that, you can look at, which chain you're using and, how efficient Ethereum is, and whether, transitioning from proof of work to proof of stake, improves things. But you can also sort of minimize your, needless interactions with the audience and with the user. And you can make everything so that you get more bang for your buck if you have this spatial framework that you've designed. And, I think, early spatial frameworks, just like Legend of Zelda, like the early map version of it, or, you look at, Myst in the early games where you're creating this world which sort of gets into your mind whether you're playing the game or not. And that's in contrast to some of the just like a one-off music video that creates a world in a 2D sense, or using 2D and a half, sort of, where they use 3D tools, but then it's really just a 2D video, something like that, where you can't interact with it. It doesn't really, you don't have a spatial sense for it, and it's it's not something that has that additional sort of meaning that can go into your mind and become almost part of a language or meaning that you can share with other people. So I think that's one way of looking at the sustainability question. The other way I would argue is like accessibility. And I saw someone else had a slide on Axie Infinity, and a lot of those really successful blockchain games, you can't be an average person and just go in there. Even Sandbox, like I have a streamer who, for our Twitch channel, goes in and samples a lot of these and sort of for an average younger audience goes in and demos all of these different projects, and a lot of them you can't even get into without thousands of dollars. And for the average person on the street corner waiting for a bus who wants to be involved in something, they can be involved in following a sports team like the Eagles. They can wear Eagles garb, they can be checking the scores and the stats and everything. They can be thinking about Disney World and the trip they took last year, but they can't get into these environments unless they have so much, A, money, and B, sort of time to get into it. So I think that the interesting thing with Web3 is to make it more, not just, democratized in an ownership sense for those who are, in a DAO or in a project early on and have the benefit of getting in there, but how do you create sort of a more open gaming or meaningful content framework that everyone can join in, like the Super Bowl. It's like, anyone can watch that and become invested in it and think about it and talk about it the next day. Not everyone can go in Axie Infinity and have a meaningful conversation with the next person at the bus stop talking about what they're doing in there. And I think that, when you look at a sustainability perspective, I think that the accessibility side of it really matters, and who can participate in these projects. What's the socioeconomic demographic of people in there? Is it just whales who are, investing essentially as if it were like a stock market? And that can be fun too. And, lots of people have fun investing in the stock market and making money. But when you look at sort of Web3 gaming, how do you make it fun and accessible and still, be on chain and still be environmentally friendly? And I think that that's sort of the next sort of frontier. How do you have, a meaningful framework that lots of people can understand? And, sort of like Disney World. I mean, it's not cheap for anyone to go there. But once you've been there, you have sort of a democratized, common understanding of what it is. And once you've played in Zelda, you have a common understanding of what it is. And how do you build something on chain that still, has some scarcity and has some value, but is open to people? And I think that's the most interesting, sort of way of framing the discussion going forward. But I would argue, it's by leveraging, in our case, we have sort of a spatial framework that's set up, and then within that, we have certain Web 2 type, content that can come to you and be delivered when you subscribe, so that you can get updates, via text and via email and other clues and other sort of changes to the narrative arc, which then relate back to the framework, which is, more of an abstract, meaningful world that you're in. But you don't need to be in there to understand what's being talked about outside of it. And I think that's the main thing. Like when you're either on Netflix or you're off Netflix for the most part, but when you're at Disney World, you can still have that value from your trip 2 years ago when you're thinking about it with someone right now and remembering it. And I think that's sort of the interesting way that, a level of abstraction adds a layer of value and sort of something that excites people. And in a role-playing context, I think that, NFTs enable people to actually own their role and their participation, so that basically, it was possible before, like, Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. You could play those online, you could play lots of different ARGs, but there wasn't really the ownership component of it. And it was still sort of like publisher versus user or player. And now I think that having the framework in place with NFTs becoming more mainstream, I think that's what provides this like tremendous opportunity to like sort of breathe life into these spatial frameworks and 3D environments. Should I stop there and take a couple questions or ask for if anyone wants me to clarify anything? There's lots of different ways I could, different directions I could head from here.
Yeah, you can answer the question, and then we can have an additional like a Q&A session in the end.
Okay, let me look in the comments here. It looks like I'm getting, let's see. Orlando in the house, Disneyland in Anaheim is a very impressionable design that sticks in the mind. Jim, could you touch on NFTs as mode, brand engagement, and brand advocacy? And then let me just look at everyone else. Okay, how does Disney create a narrative? As a motive. Okay, so could you touch about NFTs as a mode of brand engagement and brand advocacy? Yes, so within, and this is again where you either have sort of a common virtual world framework like Sandbox or Decentraland or Superworld, and there's all of these ones that are sort of providing the Disneyland. It's more like a mall concept in a way, where they own the rights to the common spaces and to the common aesthetic, and then you as a brand like Louis Vuitton or Prada, you're essentially getting a kiosk in the mall that is consistent with the overall aesthetic of it. So that's one example of sort of how, as a brand, you get into these worlds, and that's all in the papers every day, basically. The other way is to build sort of one-off experiences using NFTs and immersive web experiences, and having your own brand world. And Montclair, and there's a bunch that I look at all the headlines every day, and I don't have time to check them all out. The one-off side, they're very interesting, but they're also it's not very easy to distribute them to your audience or to your customer base, because they're so, you have to be in the right time at the place to sort of get notified about them. And the way I get notified about them is being subscriber to 50 NFT and Web3 mailing lists every day, so I sort of scan those. But as a brand connecting with your customer base, Nike's been most successful with that, and sneakers have been very successful. But beyond that, I don't know that those other experiences really reach as many people as they're intended to at this point. And there's so much noise in the marketplace that it's hard to sort of figure out what's effective in that area. But from an NFT perspective, I think there's a number of ways from a storytelling perspective that those brands can start to build a world. And Louis Vuitton just had one last week that looked very interesting to me that I haven't had a chance to check out, but you could Google it, that they have sort of like a world building game that they've built that I want to check out. And it sounds good because it's defined enough, and it's a high profile enough brand, and it's sort of an aspirational brand that it could start to get some mainstream crossover. But beyond that, like with Sandbox and everything else, it's like, is there a real value to launching the Galaxy for Samsung in the metaverse, when if you Google all the headlines, it didn't really work as well as sort of the Web 2 links into a press conference, essentially, and I think that's where there's some kinks to be ironed out that just don't really exist right now for a ton of people to join in at the same time in the metaverse, and to have it be open to all, or all the products be open to at the same time, just due to restrictions on who can get into this platform versus that, and distributing the information about when it's happening to everyone. I think it's much easier to just get a headline on Twitter, like join this YouTube link at a certain time, and YouTube Live will have a presentation. I think that is easier at this point than what people intend in the metaverse side of it. But Let me see if I get any other questions.
So could you take just one more question now, and then after the Rebecca talk, and then you can, yeah, we can have an additional session.
Yeah, I think, you know, how does Disney create a narrative? I follow a really interesting, one of the Imagineers, I think it's Joe Rohde on Instagram. He has all of these interesting sort of analogies to, you know, theme park and immersive experience building to sort of old world ideas and examples. I really recommend following him. But to answer your question on Disneyland, I think that everything fits together from a design perspective because it's controlled by one designer. So they don't rent out kiosks to, you know, Walmart and Samsung and everything as you're walking down Main Street, you know, and it becomes this sort of cohesive design because they control it all. And that's another sort of tension in the Web3 world is, you know, on the one hand, you have a DAO that's totally decentralized and, you know, is just, you know, subject to change at any time, depending on what's being voted and, you know, what's coming in, what's going out. It doesn't really have a cohesive narrative experience tied to it that people expect, you know, from an entertainment perspective or a storytelling perspective. And that sort of relates to, you know, immersive, interactive interaction design in general, immersive experiences in general, is like what level of interactivity is optimal. And if you have total interactivity, like in Google Maps, like I can walk down any street and I just click on the McDonald's pin and I click on the, you know, this movie was filmed here, here's the clip. That's total interaction, but it's not a meaningful narrative arc. So it's not really entertainment. It's sort of like work. It's like an information sorting device where you go through to find out things. And that's sort of the old way of thinking about it, I think, as opposed to the narrative arc side of Web3. I think that you have to be led with a certain degree of freedom and interaction, but not too much and not too little. It's sort of like Goldilocks. You know, you need to have an immersive experience that is still a presentation to you of a narrative, but with some level of interactivity that makes it feel real. And, you know, an example of that on Netflix was Bandersnatch a few years ago, Black Mirror, where, you know, that was a really exciting pilot project, but you don't see many more like that. And from a narrative perspective, it cheated because it's sort of, you know, no matter which direction you choose and which, you know, serial you choose, you sort of end up with the same message in the end. So it worked in that construct, but you didn't see like 1,000 others come out like that. You did on Netflix for kids, but not for adults and, you know, serious entertainment offerings. And I think that that's the problem, is like you don't want something that's too much work for someone, too much to think about, too much like you're actually in a shopping mall and have to be like knocking on every door and, you know, walking in every store, because that's not entertainment really. That's not really like sitting on the couch entertainment. And a lot of the user tests I did in the past, you know, it's like, where would you rather be experiencing all this, like out in the street in the rain or on the Brooklyn Bridge used to have, you know, immersive experiences tied to it on apps. And it's like all of that, it's so hard to like get a bunch of people together in that spot and have the weather be good and do it. Most people like to think of these things, you know, on their couch or when they're on their computer in their chair or waiting at the bus stop. And that's when like you really have an opening to get into someone's mind and latch on, I think, as opposed to, you know, when you're out and about, your mind is sort of like in a task, you know, tackling different tasks that, you know, you're out there and doing this, you're trying not to get hit by a car. You can't really immerse yourself in content in the same way, at least, that you can when you're sort of resting and thinking and absorbing entertainment or other media. So
Thanks, Tim. Okay, so Rebecca, it's your turn. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're waiting.
No,
so-
it's fine. And unfortunately, I'll let you guys know that I actually do have to bounce at the top of the hour. But so I'm going to skip my presentation. But I wanted to echo everything that Jim is saying is absolutely the thing that we're all wrestling with as we wrestle with Web3. And it's so interesting because my career started in Web 1, working with big brands like the Oxygen Network, which was nascent at the time, and ESPN and folks like that trying to figure out the internet. And now here we are trying to figure out Web3, trying to figure out the metaverse together, and brands are doing the same thing. And so it's not just brands, but it's also, you know, being able to produce the kind of quality entertainment, whether that's a game on your phone or it's something that everybody's talking about, whether it's a Black Mirror, like Jim said, but being able to build communities around that is what Web3 is all about. And it's so interesting because I've been having a lot of conversations with DAOs, Game7.io, which is coming out of BitDAO, and folks that are talking about like, what is this metaverse and how do we guide it? And especially those of us that have been around and have done Web 1, 2, and 3 are really looking towards not only what is important for audiences that are already consuming content that are Web 2 content or, you know, consuming content that's on television, but also emerging markets. And that was, you know, when I talked to Alex about this recently, and the pitch, the deck that I have that I will be happy to send to anybody later is really about using Axie Infinity as a case study for emerging markets and how things are different. And I'm going to present only one slide from it, but it's something that I think is really important and germane to the discussion. We talk about things like brands trying to figure out how to navigate and gaming studios trying to figure out how to navigate, television studios, generally like the whole population trying to figure out how to go from Web 2, which is the social layer, which is social internet, to Web 3, which is a more distributed, co-created model. Alex really pointed out in his presentation how co-creation is actually the hallmark of Web 3. And when I say co-creation, it's not just, I had an idea on the internet and they made a television show out of it, but it's more, I had an idea on the internet and I received some of the compensation and the recognition for coming up with that idea, which is what the blockchain helps us do, right? So not going through all of my presentation, but going through a little bit of it. One of the things that I found the most interesting, I was working at FTX and I hired a Philippine team, and I hired them specifically because they have a lot of blockchain experience, because they'd worked for Coinbase or they'd worked for Kraken or they'd worked for different companies that had gone with a let's get really low paid folks in the third world model. And it's not a knock on them. It's just that the minimum wage is so much less there than it is here. But these people, that especially the folks that I hired, that I mentored, that I know, that I've gone to Cebu and visited, these folks were looking for an entry point. They were looking for a way to get in to the metaverse, to the things that they'd heard about, the things that they were excited about. They were playing games. They had their phones. They were asking, how can we be a part of ownership? How can we be a part of the global economy? And that's actually one of the greatest things. Like, we talk about brands wanting to get in and this wanting to get in and that wanting to get in. But what I get excited about is women wanting to get in, and people who have been traditionally shut out of gaming, or that feel intimidated by gaming, or feel intimidated by picking up their phone and actually leveling up a character. And then, you know, this is Axie Infinity talk, but, you know, you get your character, you breed them, you level up, you're able to sell the fruits of your labor for a certain amount of capital. That's really important. And that's one of the things that makes me most excited about the metaverse, is not how can brands exploit it or how can we understand it, but how can women and how can people who have been traditionally shut out of a lot of financial instruments actually use the metaverse to increase their social capital and their actual capital. And I have a lot of like massive amounts of real world examples, and frankly, find me on LinkedIn and I would love to talk to you about it. But one of the things that I found the most compelling is a recent study that was done. And that's the thing that I'm going to share. So let me do that real quick, because it was actually the thing that blew my mind today while I was
Rebecca,
preparing this
how about the
presentation.
skim over what you prepare and then focus on this one? How about it? Because I want to see, because I look at your the first page and I'm fascinated about your presentation.
I will share it with everybody. Unfortunately, I do have a hard
Yeah,
stop,
you can,
and
if
it's
you
not,
share that, I will, yeah, let them know.
I will,
about that.
I'll do a share and I'll send you the link. But this
Mhm.
is the moment that actually, let me go back. This is the moment actually that blew my mind. So I have a number of folks that I know in the Philippines that I love. They're people that help me build FTX's customer support to what it is today. They're people that also, you know, have families, and they went through a terrible typhoon last year and they had a lot of rebuilding to do. This is what the metaverse is doing right now as we speak, not theoretical. There are folks in the Philippines that are making well over minimum wage simply by participating in this global phenomenon that is Axie Infinity. It's not just the Philippines, it's Southeast Asia, it's India, it's places where they're allowed to play and allowed to earn, you know, to earn AXS, to burn the SLT. A lot of you guys have probably already heard about it, but you know, I'd love to talk about this more in depth, and I apologize that I'm kind of running short of time today, but here is the bottom line and the thing that I found today. Right now, American companies are paying less than $2 an hour for folks to answer phones for them in the Philippines and in Malaysia and a lot of these other, you know, folks, and they're there and they're, you know, they're doing this work. But what crypto has done and what Web3 has done and what this nascent metaverse has done is say, hey, this is an agnostic situation. It doesn't matter where you are. You can earn, you can see the fruits of your labor, and you can play games and you can participate in the same economy that everybody else does. And there are no boundaries. There's not a country boundary. There's not, you know, your government says that you can't do this or this is your wage, but it's what you put into it that comes back. And that's what I think most of us that are working in gaming, in entertainment that is metaverse enabled, working with brands, but also just working with real, honest folks that are just out there. This is the thing that's the most exciting. We have an opportunity as a community, not a crypto, you know, just a crypto community, but generally as a community, to acknowledge the fact that, you know, there are a lot of crazy governments. There's a lot of dictatorial people out there. There's, in the Philippines in particular, they've had somebody ruling them in a pseudo-democratic situation that has kept wages low for folks, but also, you know, is very much corrupt and hoarding. And so it's been interesting, especially in the aftermath of the recent typhoon last year, watching crypto companies step up. I was working at the FTX at the time. Cebu got hit really bad. A lot of our folks were there. We stepped up and made sure that that happened, but also the folks that were there had the power to earn a little bit of capital and to play games and to participate in this economy without having to worry about anybody coming in and taking that away from them. And I have, like I said, I'd love to go through the presentation. I'm really sorry, by the way, Alex, that I do have to go, but this is something that I think is crucial to understanding the possibilities of the metaverse. There's a lot of talk about, you know, like right now, FTX is doing something with Coachella. There's a lot of luxury brands that are doing things. There's the Nikes of the world. There's game studios trying to figure it out right now. It's actually really exciting that BitDAO has funded Game7.io with a $500 million treasury, I believe, to actually, you know, go in and make this kind of gaming sustainable and actually reach the folks in Web2 that are really sad about, you know, they're like, blockchain, it's terrible. I wouldn't participate in, you know, to combat that perception. But this is me just talking as fast as I can. But there is a moment that we are currently in that allows people of color, women, people who are typically marginalized by every single tech, you know, every innovation leaves a lot of people behind. This is the moment where I feel like this innovation is not going to leave people behind. They want to participate. We're there with them. There's an egalitarian moment that we must seize. And this is what, our talk about the sustainable metaverse says, that the way you sustain it is by incorporating everybody. I think the events of the last couple of years have really shined a light on the fact that we are a globe. We are not, as much as some folks would like to think of it this way, we can't segregate ourselves. We're together. We just had a rampant virus go through us, and we look, as participants in the human condition, we look towards these kinds of things that group us together and that, really level the playing field. And I don't know that we've had a moment quite like this. I think we might have in 95, 96 when the internet first started becoming a thing and people started talking to one another worldwide. But right now we're in a moment as well where we can level the playing field for the folks that we live near. Even if they're on the other side of the globe, we're still near. And it's so interesting watching play to earn evolve. Like Axie, I think, is a really good example, because I think the folks that, despite hacks, despite sidechain problems, despite everything, I think there's a really good, solid tokenomics there that really actually enables this economy. But I'm actually really excited and interested to hear what's next and how it enables the folks that are in India or are in Pakistan, or those folks that really want to participate in this global economy. And I'm talking about the real people, not the governments or not the people that are fighting over resources, but actually real people that have families. And so that's what I'm excited about when we talk about the sustainable metaverse. I think of it as everybody has an equal opportunity given the constraints of hardware, but also knowing that the constraints of hardware are getting cheaper and cheaper. Almost everybody has a phone and they can participate in this economy. So that is my quick TED talk, and I actually have to drop, and I hate to do that before questions, but I cannot change this meeting, unfortunately. So I'd love to hear from you guys. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Rebecca Cooper Lowe. I'm the only one, but I have to drop. So sorry.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, I think that's very important aspect, like is what you mentioned about equal opportunity, and then also like diversity and inclusion. That's a very important topic to care about the society and people in. Yeah, that's a significantly that we should think about when you actually design metaverse. So yeah, I miss you, but you don't have a time.
I'm so sorry that I have to go, but this was a great conversation. I look forward to more of these, by the way. So thank you all. And if you want to listen to my TED talk about Axie and how it's changed real people's lives, I'm there for it. Otherwise, thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah. Okay, so it's almost time. So we are going to have additional maybe 10 more minutes about the Q&A. So if you have any question, then you can ask us. But if you want to some specific like a Jim or me or I'm not sure whether Rebecca can stay here, but yeah. Do you have any question? Manuel, do you have any question? Because he is also the sustainability expert. You maybe have a, how about because I designed like a sustainability with the metaverse, if somebody doubt about what is all about the metaverse with the sustainability, right?
Well, thank you, Alex. You helping me actually with the question, because first thing, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of information Jim and of course you and Rebecca presented. So really the sustainability presents a different axis. I don't think we have enough time to touch it here in details, but maybe in sort of a few words, Jim, how do you see sustainability, ESG, environmental, social, and governance playing in a combination of a physical and virtual space, which is metaverse, at least in my definition?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, and I think to get back to what I was saying before, I think that the accessibility side, and Rebecca touched upon this, I think that's like hugely important. And to touch upon what she said, I think that it is true that it's, the metaverse and Web3 is giving tremendous opportunities to people to have ownership over their work and a much more diverse group of people. Like when I go in, Clubhouse rooms or Twitter spaces or other places that NFT people congregate and artists and everything, it's much more diverse than other, tech forums that I go to. And it's really interesting to see. So that it gives you this way as a proprietor or owner of your art or owner of your IP to make money off of it, which, I think is, just the way forward for all of these projects. But on the other side, and I think that, I would have asked Rebecca, when you look at the earning potential from being a participant in these projects, like, whether it's PFP projects or like, other NFT art and owning it, then I think it starts to become more like, you're in a limited group of people at one of the big auction houses and you're buying and selling these things and you need the money to do it. So I think that from an artist perspective or an IP creator perspective, it's tremendously democratizing. But from a participant perspective, given that, a lot of the value hinges on scarcity, I think that that's where the question is, how do you get average people involved? And I think that the answer is, developing, like I was saying, more of an abstract framework that leverages a lot of this sort of role ownership and community building, but also exists outside of when you're in that game. So Axie, it's like, I don't really have a concept of what it would mean to be, immersed in that unless I'm actually in there playing it and owning something in there. So it's like, whereas all of these other projects, I think that when you think of it from a role-playing perspective, like an Eagles fan or a Giants fan, it's like, you just need, maybe you buy a t-shirt, maybe you buy a hat, maybe you check the scores. It's the barrier to entry is very low and anyone can do it. And, then you can go all out and spend thousands of dollars and, paint your house the team colors and do whatever you want. But it's like the barrier to entry to being a super fan is very low and a participant in that brand or in that team. And same thing with Disney, even though your initial cost is expensive to fly there and go there, once you've done it once, you can tell everyone about it for the rest of your life. And I think that that's sort of the thing that, the play to earn games of last year sort of lack, is that due to their scarcity, they're victims of their own success. And then you get into all of these different sort of, staking and guilds and all of these things that are designed to work around that, but it's still it's so limited that, and so scarce that that's sort of why it's valuable, is like you can,
So, Jim, I don't know if Alex would like to add anything. I know I don't want to monopolize the conversation. I'm sorry.
That's completely fine, because unless other people have their question here. Actually, somebody asked about the sharing of the information. Yeah, I'm going to send you your email about the a link to the recording and also a link to my presentation. I will also ask Rebecca whether she can share her presentation. Then if she want to share, then I will give that information. So, okay, so Manuel, do you have any additional question or comment? No?
I see a question in the comments that's interesting from Carol Ann.
Okay.
What kinds of skills should we be developing now to enter the Web3 world as it matures? And in addition to my own project, I mentor games at my undergrad. And, what's interesting is you have, I'm thinking of one of them in particular that's really successful. They're, a machine learning major, but then they're also just a tremendous marketer. And I think that, you look at creating these things like these 3D assets, whether it's in Unity, Unreal, 3D modeling and Blender, that's what the concrete skills should be. But then beyond that, it's just sort of, there's such a marketing and community building angle that if you look at, openings for Web3 projects, half of it is wanting people who can run a Discord and build a community there, which is different from like 3D modeling, but it's still the essential side of it, that to get people interested in these projects, you really need to have the story and the community around it. And that, it's either Discord or Instagram or Twitter, and it's sort of an opportunity for people to move from Web 2 to Web 3.
Okay, so another question that Rachel, can you participate in the ask about your question?
I was just saying, thank you very much. I will connect with you separately because it's too much of a question to ask in 2 seconds.
But anyway, yeah. What is your most important concern or whatever your
I guess for me, just whether this can be applied to supply chain management. Supply chain management is important topic, but actually the supply chain management is very, very important topic for the sustainability. But in the metaverse concern, I think that the I mentioned about in the like virtual shop is a metaverse shop. Actually, you can make some way to like virtualize your like, for example, the supply chain, right? And then you can visualize what is going on in the supply chain with the good for the, like, for example, like efficiency of your supply chain management or something like that. But because I wasn't a top, because that's topic actually that I'm expertise in that kind of innovation. But that's like for example, in the general mainstream, the metaverse is mostly in the virtual space and put in your price. But there is another thing very important for the like supply chain, like a metaverse is a digital twin, right? So if you can completely like digitalize your supply chain through the digital twin, that's actually another space a lot of the innovation is going on, and I also have expertise in there. And then you can have a total visibility of your space, and then you can have a lot of things, like for example, like reduce like the electricity or the reduce the carbon emission or something like that. You can have it even in the real space, right? But in the purely metaverse, like virtual, maybe the one advantage is maybe the like in the like a collaboration, like people can collaborate remotely. So in the like, for example, all of the price they can like communicate, and then it is one way actually to provide like efficiency in your supply chain management, right? So you can have many aspects, like for example, another thing maybe the sourcing. Like for example, fashion industry is very critical about like how, especially the like waste management, and then you like something that how you actually material sourcing, the original sourcing is like maybe more like eco-friendly or something like that. I think that the metaverse will be contribute, like for example, you have like collaborate like a space to with your supplier. And then before you actually choose your like your fashion like material, like fabric or whatever, then you can communicate, and then you can even test it before you actually developing based on your textile or whatever. You can prototype it, you can test it, so it's a way to actually reduce your like, for example, your like resources through this kind of metaverse space. So there may be many ideas you can develop, right? Yeah.
I used to own a small manufacturing business, so like I used to have a warehouse with supply chain issues like that, but it was pre-mass adoption. But I think that it's less a metaverse topic than it is sort of like a pure VR or RFID like development, where the companies today, like huge companies, just really leverage RFID with everything and tag everything, and you can go in and visualize it in certain VR B2B platforms that are not entertainment or made for average people, but once you're trained, your assembly and supply chain people can all go in there. So I think that there's like tremendous opportunity there, but it's less a metaverse topic than it is just like pure VR or RFID.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any additional question? I think we already spent 10 minutes. So, okay, so what is this question?
Alex, if there is time, and that's a question more directed to you, but during Jim's presentation, I sort of started to ask myself if I take my camera, my 3D camera into Disney, who owns the NFT? Who owns because I'm pretty sure the corporations will say, this is, my playground. You are just a visitor and you have very limited rights, maybe not even the right to take your camera. So solve the problem that way.
I think that's a really interesting question, and it's one that the courts really have not decided yet. And you look at some of these platforms, like the virtual land platforms, like Superworld, which is really interesting and a great project. It's like you can buy Disney on there from them and buy that space on a map and then post stuff there. I mean, it's the same thing as with AR experiences in public 5 years ago, where people were battling, what if I put something on the Empire State Building? Can the Empire State Building sue me if it's like within a certain app? And I think that all of that just needs time to work its way through, the legal system, because it's not entirely clear. But I wouldn't post something controversial in an app on the Empire State Building because I would fear of getting sued.
So it sounds like a good question for Alex as well.
Yeah, I think the one comment is that, like, for example, the NFT is a representation of some asset value, right? So asset could be real and virtual, whatever, right? So for example, you make NFT for something, then what is the right? Is the ownership is original ownership is for the original asset you to make as NFT, and then for example that you have have a picture, right? You take a picture, right? The picture is your ownership, but you can make a NFT based on your picture, right? And then still you have ownership. You have an IP right, right? You have an ownership that you can let other people make another NFT because you are the original owner. But for specific NFT you develop based on your portal, it's a digital, right? It's the asset, it's a value. It will be transferred to anyone. And then who own this one? This only for this digital representation you own if you buy this NFT.
Right, but you see, and again, I don't want to take the discussion on the tangent. The same thing I can say about copyright. I take a picture of your book, right? A few pictures, and you say, no, it's my book. You just photocopied or copied,
right?
Or put
So,
it in
so
Metaverse.
you buy your book means that you only buy your own one book, right?
One copy, right?
One copy. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But the original author can have another copy, right? So,
but once I put in Metaverse my NFT, now it can be viewed by thousands and millions of people.
Right.
All over the world.
Right.
And at that point, the owner may say, well,
yeah,
this is my business.
That's what
not...
Jim already mentioned. It can be this.
Anyways, I think this is for.
I mean, I think clearly, if you took pictures of different Nike shoes and then made them into NFTs and made it into a big profile picture project, I think you would get sued. I mean, if it became successful enough that it was on their radar, I think that they would have to sue to protect their trademark. You know, if it has swooshes all over it, it's like it's like unlike, it's not like it's different, you know. But it's,
well,
it just hasn't been.
I propose we leave it for for a future webinar.
I think
because
we need
this
another
can be-
webinar about the topic. It will be like take a 1 hour even to discuss about NFT.
Maybe some your colleagues from NIU Law or other universities would like to
I
pitch
don't want to
it.
mention now because I'm a lawyer. So if I do something, then it can be like effective, right? So I'm doubt that I'm hesitate to mention about the like legal matters because I'm New York State attorney. So, but anyway, so I think this is a valuable discussion. We will maybe plan about the kind of NFT topic, right? Okay.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for everyone to participate for today's webinar, and I really like enjoyed speaking with Jim and Rebecca, and then also like active participation and a lot of the like very good questions to have today. So as I mentioned, that I will share the recording and the presentation. I was asked Rebecca about her presentation to share. Okay, thank you everyone. Yeah, have a nice day. Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Jim. Please
Thank you.
send me your profile and the summary. Yep.
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you.